Look at Nate being first again, 3 weeks in a row. He was waiting for us.
He was ready. It's almost like the Jeopardy, like the buzzer, like who can buzz in.
Right after that, Nick goes second.
Get it. Third. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com. Okay, well, that was enthusiastic for me, at least.
He was.
Yeah.
That's too much excitement this early.
My name is Neil. I know it is too much Adrenaline.
Yes. Magellan.
Adrenaline. That would be the word for you, old man. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps, SFJ 4x4, joined in Grandma's Couch Studio
by the maddest of mad scientists, Scott Brown.
Yeah, and that producer guy over there, Jeff.
The Italian Stallion.
And also good morning to Chip and Daddy Jeep and Eric.
Good morning.
Everybody's jumping in the comments.
Getting in there. We appreciate all of you. And just a quick reminder, if you are listening in your ear hole somewhere across the globe, we absolutely value you. We appreciate you prioritizing this podcast for your infotainment. And you can join us most Mondays at 10:19 a.m. Today is, in fact, President's Day. And so, so hopefully there's more people, kind of getting to sleep in, lounge around, do whatever. If that is you, welcome to the program. You can join us on Facebook or the YouTubes at 10:19 a.m.
What makes it President's Day?
Well, what's funny is that historically, and I don't exactly have the crossover date, but historically, the United States recognized George Washington's birthday and Abraham Lincoln's birthday, both of which were born in February.
Yes.
And sometime, and I think in the 60s or the 70s, and maybe or maybe somebody will correct us online, we said, hey, instead of just celebrating these two individuals' birthdays, let's conjoin it into a day to just kind of pay respect to the presidential position as a whole.
Correct. And I believe the date fell kind of in between the two birthdays.
Absolutely, is my knowledge, is that it kind of falls in between the two birthdays-ish. I think we're closer to somebody's birthday than the other by like a day or two. Yeah.
I don't know.
So if you want...
Bill's saying good morning, and Roy saying good morning, buddies. Neil looks like he's drives a stanced WRX with the white glasses.
That's
actually
fair.
true.
I'm only missing my modded shoebox vape, if that was the case. And yeah, I see you. I see you, Subaru owners, and I'm calling you out right now. So I will talk about the glasses and our chill time at the end of the program if you choose to stay in here and join us with that. And I wanted to bring up my tidbit about why I'm so familiar with the President's Day history piece.
Besides being raised by two teachers.
Well, besides that, yes, it actually has to do with here's my little guilty insight into Neil Simpson. One of my favorite movies all time ever is Holiday Inn. Would either of you know what Holiday Inn is?
Nope.
I don't know if I know that one.
Holiday Inn is it's a classic movie with Bing Crosby and Fred Astaire. And long story short, it is
when you just thought Neil could get weirder, and we just turned that corner.
Welcome to that. Welcome to those insights, folks. Welcome to those insights. So there you go. There's your conversation about President's Day. Anyway,
it's a 1940s movie.
It is
1942.
Yeah. So God bless it. I've actually told this story before. There was a gentleman. He was buried in the backwoods of Western Pennsylvania, and I could tell you kind of how to get to his house at this point. And I think the story I've shared on air before is I showed up to his house because he had a handful of dilapidated Jeeps rotting away at the wood line, as most people should. And I showed up to talk to him about the Jeeps, and he had no interest in talking about Jeeps. To him, they were just kind of these, the earth needed to reclaim them faster, in his opinion. But he's the one who had those beautiful Buicks. This is the Buick guy. And you know what? Funny enough, he said he had kind of, as he had aged, and I really am concerned that he has passed at this point. I'd love to find him. But I just concerned about what I would find. But he said he doesn't leave the house anymore. He really just watches movies from the 30s and 40s. And maybe a few into the 50s, because it was just kind of, in his opinion, a simpler time. And it was funny because the nature of some of my own personal interests, I could really kind of, I could see that, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, there's a couple movies from the 40s, actually several movies from the 40s that actually top my tier as my favorite all-time movies.
They
So-
got long good with my mom. There was constantly the old movie channels on.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Ruined
just,
it for me.
I'm sure. I don't think I had a lot of patience for him as a kid, but I've certainly grown to appreciate them more. And that's what this guy kind of was. He just wanted to turn off the news and watch those movies. And we got along swimmingly because of that. So, anywho, we are going to be unpacking the legend of Squatch Patrol 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you had joined us last week, or if you had not, we were chronicling this particular Jeep that has, we've been servicing for just under 10 years at this point. We actually had a lot of fun last week because we are going to be doing a YouTube video on or with the Jeep as well. Kind of talking about it being the ultimate TJ Wrangler. And it was neat going back to 15 or 16 when the Jeep kind of first came into our stewardship, and seeing some of the pictures and seeing some of the communication with the owner and kind of really getting to relive some of those memories. So not just through the conversations and the fun talking points that we've been able to share over the years, but really dig back into the archives and bring some of that stuff out.
I think one of my favorite things about it in recent history would have been actually this week, where you and I were on a test drive on it, and somebody's wife is all excited about this big Jeep driving around.
So I get a picture from my wife, and she's like, "Hey, look at this giant TJ I saw on the road. It's got Florida tags on it. It's really weird." Yep, I work on that.
Yeah, I worked on that. Yeah, we were
That's Neil and Jeff out test driving
now test driving.
because I just worked on it.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Because I just fiddled with some things, and
Yeah.
we needed to make sure it was working.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's so true. And we're getting ready to turn it out. Which, knock on wood, we've recently replaced one of the last primary major components of it, which we'll be unpacking today.
Yeah, it's like a fine wine at this point. It's just very refined.
It is incredibly refined, and I'm so thrilled with this most recent iteration of
Me
it.
too.
There have been things that have been a little quirky, a little questionable, just because of the immense amount of work that's been put into it. But this time around, I'm going, and in fact, so much so, folks, that we've actually got just under 600 miles on it through rigorous test driving and kind of application since this last final rendition of it. Which myself or one of the guys here on our team have put that windshield time on the Jeep. And it's a funny thing, because anytime we get that invasive into a restoration or a performance mod, that first 500 to 1,000 miles is hypercritical, because if it's going to act up, it's going to act up in that time period.
You gotta work out all the problems.
Got to
and
work out the
fiddling.
bugs.
Yep.
Things oftentimes aren't perfect within, the moment you do the last swing of the hammer, the last turn of the wrench. Oftentimes things aren't perfect. You can appreciate that as a DIYer.
Mhm.
It's only intensified at a professional level, especially when we're so invasive to the build,
And especially using so many different parts and pieces
right?
a few times.
A few times. So what
Before we get into it too much, I want to jump back to comments because we got a bunch in there again. So we've got Darla saying good morning. Chip actually loves that movie. I watched it every year. He said White Christmas was actually supposed to be a sequel, but Fred Astaire retired, so Danny Kaye got the part, and they filmed in the same hotel for both movies. Did you know that?
Oh, I can actually do a whole 100-point trivia on these two movies.
Okay.
There's actually a third movie that's related. Fun fact, Chip, we'll drink, we'll do what I used to call campfire whiskey talks with some folks. And hey, if you're listening and I actually get to go wheeling again at my life, I used to crave what I call campfire whiskey talks, which are the end of the night when you're done wheeling, you're kind of tired and you're just sitting around sipping on a drink, eating some snacks, and just that's really when that magic moment of the off-roading happens, And I like a calm evening. I don't want to go all get out hyped up and get behind the wheel of a vehicle.
No.
So I love a campfire whiskey talk. So I'll hold that. I'll hold that with you, Chip. Should we have that opportunity, and we'll talk about that. There's actually a third movie that's semi-related.
All right. And then Jeannie said, hello, my friends. Hope you had a fantastic Valentine's Day. My favorite day of the year.
And Jeannie, you know what? Special Valentine's Day for you. Your RHD, the Cookie Monster, the fancy brand new axle, literally showed up this morning. So as a little piece for tuning in, there's your Valentine's gift from us, and Chrysler Corporate. So all right, I was bringing this up to speed. The Jeep had showed up it was a combined coordinated effort between a couple manufacturers, ourselves, our customer who was international at the time with the vehicle residing in Florida, had spent some time in Wisconsin while he was employed there for a 6-year stint, driven all over the country, done a bunch of memory making experiences, raised kids in it. It was a daily driver. The concept of I could invest in a new vehicle, I could purchase a new vehicle and then some basic minor mods, or I could just take that same or similar amount of money and invest in the vehicle that owes me nothing, that has created memories and kept my family safe. Seems legitimate. You know, a lot of us can enjoy that. Went ahead and purchased a new frame, a full long arm suspension, some beefy hybrid axles, which are a Core 44, if you're not familiar, which was a decent axle when it first came out. Kind of a hybrid between a 44 and a 60 platform. And went ahead and asked us to start to put this Jeep together. And again, it showed up on basically 31s and a 2-inch budget boost.
Yep.
And was his primary catalyst was installing a 4-to-1 Terralo transfer case in it.
Yep.
And so that was kind of his primary objective, and found us on the interwebs because at that time Scott and I had a global little side piece where we were doing warranted, remanufactured, slip yoke eliminated, equipped transfer cases, ready to come to you for your TJ, XJ, so on and so forth vehicle. And so that was how James, and by extension his son Andy, found us. So at this point in time, they take the Jeep. The Jeep actually had just under 200,000 miles on it. It was
fine.
It was, and the thing with James was, it was a 200,000 miles, 199 or 195,000 and change, 4.0 engine. He had put a Melling, not quite a performance oil pickup pump in it, but Melling makes a great product. I love it. Any engine we build, it's absolutely getting one of Melling's line. He had put a performance water pump on it, high output rate. He allowed us to put the high output alternator on it. He had a remanufactured head from 2001 that had some problematic.
I think he had
heads.
an upgraded starter as well.
We upgraded the starter, that first rendition, if I recall.
Yep. And he had I can't remember if it was that iteration or when the 4.7 went in. We had the beefy motor mounts. Like we went.
So that was the second iteration.
Okay.
So the first Jeep, largely drivetrain as far as that 200,000 mile for a good story 4.0, and then it had a 3550 5-speed transmission. And those of you listening at home may or may not know that's the big stepbrother of the AX15. It's okay.
It was used for like 2 seconds between the AX15 and the 6-speed.
Yes, and that's 100% having to do with Chrysler.
He's
prior to
calling us right now.
Chrysler prior to their merger of more European influence, right, with Mercedes, which really becomes Daimler Chrysler.
Yeah.
And how we get the Mercedes influence that really comes out in 04, 05, right?
Yep.
Or we get Mercedes steering gears, or we get the 6-speed Mercedes transmission. Some decent parts came out of that merger. But this is kind of the end of the Chrysler sole ownership. So anyways, the Jeep goes cross country. Greg and I are the primary builders of it at that time. So much so that, and again, you know, I may or may not have mentioned this. We had this awesome kind of moment where at the end, it was such a big deal. My dad, because it was a workplace, so, you know, we don't drink at the workplace, but my dad bought a bottle of like that sparkling grape juice, brought it in, a couple glasses, and we toasted to a job well done, this awesome big project. We shipped it to Florida. They had it for about 3 days, packed all their tools into it, drove it across the country, wheeled the heck out of it at Moab. You know, his contention at that time was the vehicle was more proficient than he was. And then they drove it back to Florida, stayed there for a couple of years before, or a year or so before he thought, hey, I'm really going to go balls out on this thing.
Which we alluded to, or told a little bit of that, and that's when the 4.7 stroker
Yes.
and the blower went on it.
Prior to the airing today, I said, well, you know, let's reiterate where we left off. And Scott says,
You're gonna air what he
You're gonna
said?
do it.
Scott says, well, we were stroking and blowing.
It's true.
So there you go. So that's where we left off. And
That is a taste of what this After Hours episode is going to be like.
Meh. Anyway, and if you remember last week, I talked about the pulley size, that they had a size that they like you to use.
yes,
And then there's one that they don't like, but it's in the instructions and it'll tell you about.
yes.
And then because James and the guy with the blower
Yes.
had a relationship, the guy
Yes.
was like, well, I actually have yet a smaller pulley
yes, that you can.
that should not be used. This is just for looking at on a shelf.
Right. This is just for bragging rights only.
And
And James was like, sign me up.
yes. And it was so small that you couldn't get the belt to grip the pulley
Right. It squealed constantly.
because it
because of the
just had
diameter.
no wrap on this pulley.
Yes.
So we fought that for a while.
A couple different belts. There's actually a particular belt, and this sounds so geeky, but this is just a fair insight into what makes us uniquely us. There is a particular belt that serpentine belt. If you don't know what I'm talking, serpentine belt that I love, and all of our big builds tend to get this particular serpentine belt.
This one got many of those.
And
belts.
this one, yeah, we had to go through and many of our bigger builds, engine swaps and whatnot, get custom.
Don just joined us right in time for that conversation to start. So he goes, what a conversation to join.
Yeah, now I'm talking about my favorite belts for use on these bigger jobs. Happy Valentine's Day, folks. So we
Oh, boy.
so the particular and it's made by Gates.
And it's green.
And it's green, right? So you definitely know if we've
Yeah.
touched it. And I run these serpentine belts on all of my applications. I've got it on the International. I've got it on anything I can put it on.
Yeah, that's more of a commercial use belt. It's what you would see on a taxi cab or something that just doesn't get shut off.
Correct.
Hey,
And
James just joined the conversation. Sorry we couldn't answer the phone, but glad you made it.
yeah, absolutely, James. Just so you know, James, we're talking all about you today. So
You didn't hear the last part.
I was gonna say, good or bad, you know.
Second week in a row.
Second week in a row.
Yeah.
Um,
I like
So-
green.
yeah, that's true. So, so as far as this belt is concerned, you know, that was the objective, to get this high quality,
As grippy as they
commercial,
could.
grippy belt on there. Now, so at this point in time, the particular engine, if you do or don't remember, was made by Golin Engine, and Golin made it as a naturally aspirated 4.7. Now,
Yeah.
4.6 is very normal. 4.7 is just a hair punched over more than your average stroker motor. As a stroker, if you're unfamiliar, the stroker literally gets its kind of short name vernacular from the idea that the stroke produced by the pistons is changed from what it should have been originally. I guess that's probably the most basic overview of that. The actual physical displacement, the punched over, and the stroke gives you the displacement number. So be it 4.6 or 4.7. Inherently itself, you can punch over and when I say punch, meaning hone out or open up the cylinder size of a 4.0. If you had to, you could punch over a 4.0 to 30 over or 40 over without changing the crankshaft. You don't inherently make it that much more greater displacement, right? It's nominal at best. That conversation of a 4.6 or 4.7 inherently comes at opening up the cylinder bores and the stroke of the crankshaft itself.
Which, for those that didn't live through that, is a 258 older motor crankshaft.
Correct.
And there was just umpteen different crankshafts.
Yes.
And there was a sweet spot where you would get the preferred
crankshaft
and counterweights, and there was this whole science to it. That
I could break it all down for you because I was absolutely obsessed with it.
He was.
But all of you would leave the program and fall asleep. So,
I
just
won't
know
let
that
him do that. So anyway,
just know that we know that. And when everybody else was like out partying in their 20s, I was at home like obsessively journaling serial numbers.
And finding every broken 258 in the tri-state area.
Yes. And I had this I had two clapped out pick 'em up trucks. One was a 90 Comanche and one was a S10 pickup. And depending on where you were located in the country of this tri-state area.
And if you had a junk 258, you probably saw this young guy.
Yep. And I probably crossed paths with you because I was out buying up every 258. So anyways, James buys this, builds this stroker motor with Gollin. Gollin is a prolific engine builder out of New Hampshire. That's all they do. Naturally aspirated. We marry it with a blower motor, as outlined, was actually off of a GM application.
Yeah, 3800, but modified to use the 4.0 throttle body and some other things. So it wasn't just straight off the 3.8. And then, like I said, we used the smaller pulley.
This particular job was as far as getting the base boost metrics with the AFR gauge and tuning. We actually did a live remote tuning, meaning we actually went out and did road testing, reported back to the blower manufacturer, and reported back those findings. We did like a bunch of phone calls, bunch of laptop work, and did the best to tune that engine out.
James is actually saying the supercharged stroker had about the same horsepower as the 5.7 Hemi.
It did. It had a hair less, but it was a pretty complicated apparatus.
And then we always had this, or at least me and Neil had this conversation. You can make awesome horsepower with small displacement.
Yes.
But it has a very short
life,
brilliant life.
Yes. It's like a great firework, right?
Yes,
There's those fireworks that boom and make really.
It reaches high height and great wow.
Yes.
But then it goes boom.
It goes boom. It doesn't have that lasting, kind of consistency.
No.
So needless to say, we do a couple other modifications. At that time, transmission stays the same. The 4-to-1 case is already in. Long arm is happy, healthy. Everything's gravy. In that particular iteration, we relief, recess, French in the rear shocks. Now, the thing is, if you watch on the YouTube video, I talk about the first iteration. The 6-pack Game Changers did not fit well on the throttle down custom
stock location.
In the stock location. Just a combination of where the perches were on the axle, the aftermarket axle, to the
large body of the shock,
and then the frame. So we do this really trick shock, kind of relief it into the frame.
And just for the real diehards, this is about the same time we were playing with Chuck and doing the coilovers in the back. So Greg was inspired.
Yes.
And he made Greg's version.
Yes.
And completely out of custom, put him into that a very similar-esque scenario, and it's been working great
beautifully
to this day.
He laid them back so that they're kind of in an optimal arc of travel. Really cool stuff, right? We put a lot of effort and energy into that.
But anyway, which way we tune the Jeep to best of our ability.
Yep.
We ship it off, and
so that was the one, and I do want to take a moment because that was actually the year that we met James and Andy.
Yes.
Because we had yet to actually meet them through the course of the vehicle. The vehicle arrived and left via transport. And the funny thing is, it actually traveled up and down the coast in an enclosed trailer. Daryl White, who used to join us on the program, super cool dude. Used to actually run substitute and pit for NASCAR. He ran, he drove the semis for NASCAR as a substitute driver, and then he pitted on a number of prolific teams. Really cool dude out of Ohio. Had an independent logistics truck where he ran an enclosed container up and down the East Coast, and he had a prolific account in Detroit, and he had the most amazing stories about some of these vehicles that he would haul into downtown Detroit, and the police would come and block the road off and not allow both bystander walkers or any type of vehicular traffic in front of one of these converted skyscrapers downtown. The cars would get unloaded kind of in secret, go in through the front double doors. So think about where like the rotational doors or maybe your big sliding glass doors for a big skyscraper would be. They were converted, so the car would go in. They had converted elevators, and they would take the cars up to a undisclosed floor on one of these converted downtown buildings in Detroit. Great stories, right?
Yeah.
Kind of car folklore stuff, you know? But anyways, his trailer, for him, taking a Jeep up and down the coast wasn't a big deal.
No.
But the Jeep was technically too big. So we would have to take...
If you've ever seen Bigfoot go on a trailer
Yes.
from when we were kids, that's what we were inspired by.
Yes.
So early days, we went and we found every donut spare we could find.
Yes.
Put on this Jeep, and it was hysterical.
Right.
How this giant Jeep on these little tiny tires, and it did awesome burnouts, by the way, on temp spares.
And people always were like, well, that's so funny. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And we're like, well, we got to make it fit in the trailer.
And
you know?
as you also remember last week, we said we put a Dub J or WJ brake
Steering
swap
kit.
and steering kit on the front, somewhere in there.
This is that second iteration. We did that.
Well, guess what happens when you do that? You can't put an XJ temp spare on anymore.
Correct.
So then you know what you do? You flip that sucker around and run it backwards.
So it looks like these giant pizza cutters hanging out the side of the vehicle.
Yes. With
and
all
it's-
the brake hanging out behind it.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely like goofy, skipped leg day clown looking thing,
So
you know?
doing that, it would just go in Daryl's trailer. And then you rolled the 37s out
Yep.
to basically take up a whole nother car spot.
Yep. Daryl would pack them in, and we would stack them and strap them so that the 37s would show up. It would eventually show up in Florida, and James and Andy would swap the wheels and tires over themselves. And
Good times.
it was great. So we shipped. So that Jeep actually, the first time we meet them is they fly into Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. And
He commented about those donuts. He said, you should see me driving down the road on the donuts, barking every gear.
I'm sure. Yeah, they absolutely. There's just no traction there.
No.
They're just you guys like the lowrider scene where you put like 13-inch Daytons on something.
Pretty
That's
much. That was
kinda
the
what it
Jeep
looked like.
version.
It's the Jeep version.
So in any regard,
So we are at Bantam. You
Yep.
had just finished this resto mod, year one resto mod
on
on.
an 80 CJ7.
It was beautiful, and Greg had largely at that point in time. Well, I had a huge, heavy hand in the first iteration of James's job. But at that point in time, as a company, we had really started to expand more. We had taken on more projects. We had some part-time folks helping out.
I was going over and giving Greg the pep talks that you were giving before.
You're right. We were jumping in, moving stuff around, helping doing stuff, and we just kind of started to change as a business a little bit. But in the grand scheme of the life, the restoration department had really started to be born, and the performance department really was born.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of you, as decorated builders, I was very proud of over each kind of department or process.
Yep.
And I have these great pictures.
Well, because on my build, the owner came as well the
Right.
same day. Had never been to a big Jeep show before.
Yes.
And we kind of unveiled both builds to the owners at Bantam.
Yeah, it was just this really cool moment for us. And I remember just being exceedingly proud, not only of the business and our accomplishment, but specifically as you guys as individuals and how you kind of took initiative to make these Jeeps your own. And I always tell people, like, I think one of the biggest things that makes us unique is we treat every single job like it's our Jeep, you know?
Good and bad.
And yeah, that's the truth, man. Good and bad. But So we had these really incredible experience with James and Andy, and at that point in time, the Jeep. I think it came back to us and went home on a transport. I don't exactly remember
I think
how
that
it
was
goes,
the case.
but it goes down to Florida, and they get to use it for a period of time.
Yep.
I know that they went to some. They keep me posted, hit me up in my socials, send me a picture. They're at a couple Jeep meets. Of course, we have this performance-driven, long-armed, 15-inch steelies, if you remember, 15-inch steel-wheeled, Trepadors, which are a directional tire with, 2 extra spares, roof rack, ba 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 ba. And James is showing up to some of these Jeep meets up and down the east coast of Florida, where they're on 20s, 24s, 20, with lights underneath of them.
Yeah.
And he was kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. He's got this stroked little wub, 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 4.0. And it's these JKs with angry grills and underglows, you
Yes.
know? And I remember him, the picture he had sent me one time, it was basically parked in with these other Jeeps, and it looked cool. Kind of stood out like a sore thumb, but it looked cool. In the meantime, he works on this Cal induction hood, which is this kind of gnarly.
Yep.
The big thing, anytime we do performance engines, heat and cooling is arguably one of my biggest challenges,
Yep.
right?
We needed to get as much air out of it as possible, because anytime you take something to the edge of comfort, which
Yes.
is basically what happened with the 4.7 and the blower and a very small pulley,
Yes.
you make lots of heat,
Make lots of heat.
and heat is bad for lots of things.
Right. Heat's the number one enemy, and we're already talking about in Florida as well, right?
Yes.
Which is all heat and humidity.
And something else I always, find fun in, coming from the hot rod world. Usually early on in a build, you choose what you're going to give up. And most of the time when I would see something that would have a performance engine, air conditioning left the chat long time ago.
Right.
But on this, we worked very hard every time to that the air conditioning works, but that also adds a heat load onto it.
Well, I was going to say, so far what we've discovered is that our customers don't really want to give anything up,
No.
right? So all of our Florida Jeeps have to have air conditioning,
Yes.
which of course I understand. We can commiserate that. So
Yes.
no matter whether you have a old school built 360,
Yes.
which we've done remans, and we had to give them functional air conditioning.
Yep.
We've had a couple Grand Cherokees go to Florida. We've had, I feel like there's a CJ running around down there for some reason. I'm trying to remember. I know certainly we have this big TJ, but regardless, they have to have air conditioning, you
Yep.
know? Now, fortunately, you bring this up. There's actually a company in Florida dedicated just to air conditioning in Jeeps called Jeep Air.
Yes.
And they have
Thank
become
goodness.
a great partner of ours. Yeah, they've become a great partner of ours. We invested in all of the tooling to make our own air conditioning.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Because that's part of the second
All right,
thing.
that's fine.
So in any regard,
James is using it in Florida.
it's used in Florida. It's very hot, and at some point, bad juju stuff goes poof,
The engine gets real unhappy real fast.
and sort of check it out, and it's bad.
Right.
So Jeep gets shipped up. We do investigative surgery and find out that I can't remember which piston, but the piston has left the chat.
Yeah, because the Jeep ingested the blower.
Yes.
So if you don't know what that means, it's actually pretty common in the hot rod world, unfortunately.
Speaking of the AC, James was rubbing it in that while we were getting the 8 inches of snow yesterday, he's on the beach.
That's fine.
Yep.
Yep.
I could be on the beach too. I would just be up to my shins.
I mean, we could. It just wouldn't be a pleasant
It
experience.
would not be nice.
No.
All right. Yep.
Anyway, so we investigated, and at the time, I remember early on in this, we're like real hopeful, like, oh, maybe the head won't be damaged, maybe this won't be happen, and we pull the head off, and I remember Greg like, yeah, it's bad, it's a boat anchor,
Yep.
and the rod had beat the crap out of the block, that was scrap. The head had all kinds of bad stuff happen,
Yep.
that was scrap. Basically, the water pump, starter, and that kind of stuff was basically the only things that weren't going to make it.
Right.
And we're like, okay, now what do we do? And I think I remember being like Toolman Taylor going, let's put a V8 in it, more cylinders.
So the funny thing is, And just I do want to mention the issue is that blower technology on straight sixes, and honestly even on our V6s when it comes to our 3.6 JK application and our early JL 3.6, which up until about 21 you could put a blower on, is not steadfast technology. Again,
No.
it's this conversation of there's a little bit of sacrifice that comes with them, and it's a little bit of a fringe modification.
It is.
Um,
That and turbo both.
right, that
It's been
and
done.
turbo.
But and the big inherent problem with James's era is tunability.
Correct.
The computers do not like being messed with
Right.
and don't really offer much ability to tune. If you've know anything about like an LS platform, imagine the most cranky, hard to deal with computer going compared to the LS, was just like, go ahead and do whatever you want.
Absolutely. The LS, so GM, wanted, when they originated they knew that they were building a bulletproof bottom end. They knew that their block and other accoutrements of the engine were going to be so robust, they were going to change the engine world again. And what they did as well was they played really nice with the aftermarket, and they allow all of these parameters to really kind of be maximized or minimized to meet whatever your needs might be. Whereas Chrysler likes to hold on to a proprietary data set. They really don't want their computers to be messed with. They don't really want their engine parameters to be adjusted. So much so that, realistically, it's probably one of the biggest things that holds Mopar back as a muscle performance driven brand.
And if you remember back in the day, they actually had little piggyback modules that went between the computer and the harness to trick the
Yes.
computer into thinking it was happy, but changing the parameters on the outside, which kind of it kind of worked, kind of didn't work.
Sure.
Especially, but not in this right at the edge of the window pane scenario.
And realistically, we still utilize similar technologies. The Pulsar is literally engineered
Yeah.
to do that. We have piggyback computers and others. There are workarounds. That is how we do get to our ability to kind of pull all the performance out of these, inherently Chrysler-oriented platforms. But anyways, at that time, there was a conversation about, amongst James and his son Andy and us, as far as the 2.8 diesel had recently been teased at that time.
Yep.
It was in a number of SEMA builds. So Cummins had teased us as an industry with this
Crate.
diesel engine, which
Ready to run kind of scenario.
which was super cool, but not available in the grand scheme. That was one of the ideas that was thrown around. Rebuilding a stroker was thrown around. LS, which we had done a couple LS swaps at that point in time, was thrown out there. And James is a proficient motorhead himself.
Yep.
And a bit, not authentically a purist, does kind of...
Well, he wants his Jeep to have a Jeep engine.
Sure.
So that meant we weren't using anything GM, anything Ford, to the point we weren't using a Dodge motor.
Right.
So we found a 2008 Jeep Grand Cherokee with a 5.7 Hemi.
Yep.
It was a Jeep motor,
Mm-hmm.
and we plucked it out of its Grand Cherokee shell and traded it up and sent it off to Gollin,
Mm-hmm.
which they then tore it down, fully rebuilt it, made it pretty, made it orange, if I remember right, and put it all back together, because every good Hemi is orange.
Okay. Right.
Anyway, and then we went about making motor mounts, engineering a radiator. We got on the horn with Jeep Air and made custom AC lines. Had to send them templates, and then they sent us hoses and all kinds of fancy stuff. Dryers got moved, all kinds of things happened. Trying to get as much stuff packed in the engine bay as possible. Something else that I was just kind of let out of the bag. Most TJ Hemi swaps are done with a Ram motor, and the accessory drive and the intake are completely different than a Grand Cherokee. So immediately we had a lot of hot rod figure outage.
We were
because-
dragging a grand piano uphill both ways in the rain, man.
Yeah,
It
because
was
nothing they made was made for the engine.
I say it in the upcoming YouTube video, and I'll kind of tease you guys. If you ever think you want to do a Hemi swap in, I don't care, any Jeep application, truck motor
Get
is
a
the way
truck
to go.
motor. What we should have done is so like, hey, the motor's actually a Jeep motor, but we're going to use a Ram front cover and
that
an accessory drive. Is what we should have done.
That's what we should have done.
But-
Hindsight being 2020.
But it's fine. We just kind of dug our heels in and figured it all out, made everything fit. Can't remember what that iteration air cleaner was, but we made something work.
So that iteration, James has always fancied this kind of that
that's right.
Hummer snorkel look,
Yes.
and he desperately wanted it to come through the cowl on the passenger side, which was a kind of a mod of that time. In fact, Kenny Hawk, when he was actually building Jeeps, had a company called River Raider. And River Raider was making this Hummer-inspired little mushroom intake. It's funny because just nobody makes it, and it was very popular. It was very popular for a long period of time. We saw a lot of modded vehicles using it on their hood or on the cowl or on a snorkel top, something. And it's a completely bone dry market at this point. So if somebody's listening at home and then you can manufacture that, there's your $1 million idea.
James said shoehorsing that motor in was a feat in of itself.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was. And
the other fun part is we found out.
well, real quick, and we didn't do the mushroom air intake. We just kind of plumbed it back to over top of the battery box.
Yeah.
We were trying to get to that point, but
Yep.
it really wasn't ideal.
No. So the other fun part is, and we were like, well, we need a LA small block Mopar bell housing. That is what the 2008 Grand Cherokee Hemi uses. And can we bolt it up to the AX15/3550 bell housing? So come to find out, for like a year or two, Dodge Dakota used this transmission and a small block bell housing pattern motor.
Yep.
So we were able to find a 3.9 bell housing,
Right.
come up with a clutch and a flywheel and all this sort of stuff. Because for like 2 years, a 3/4 ton Dodge had a 5.7 and had a stick shift.
Yes.
So we got all that stuff together and working. Honestly, we didn't know how lucky we got until recently. Got to use basically the stock-ish
It all kind of
hydraulics.
goes together, and so the Hemi swap is popular amongst a number of off-road applications, but they're typically staying with
the 5-speed transmission.
No, they're not using the 5-speed. They're using automatics.
It is a 5-speed automatic.
Whoa.
Anyway,
I don't even know enough. I know that I thought it's a 545.
yes,
Automatic transmission.
5 stands for 5-speed.
Isn't that interesting? Learn me something new. I just know that it's oftentimes running with the automatic transmission.
Correct.
So all of these folks,
they go all together and then they adapt the transfer case to work.
correct. They dropped the
Where we kept the whole drive line the same, except for something we learned with a couple other builds. When you put a V8 where a 6-cylinder used to reside, the firewall and the cylinder heads don't like each other.
Sure.
So you have to drag the whole assembly forward, which sounds like not a big deal. So that means your belly pan mount changes, your drive shaft changes, your shifters all change because now it's not in the hole where it's supposed to be. So we had to make adapters for that. So we go through all that process. We make it work. We make it run. It relatively worked-ish okay for as much hot rod as it is.
Right.
We had a little bit of a heat problem, which not surprised at that moment.
Challenges with V8s.
And
That one actually had a dyno tune. We did a custom dyno tune on that.
and
one.
I laid on my back and made a custom head pipe and exhaust for a couple days
Yes.
for that iteration. And in any regard, he drove. He got to rescue people from a hurricane.
And that's really a great story. And actually, some of our issues come from that hurricane
It did.
situation. So there was a swell because it was inland.
Yep.
And the water naturally in the area had risen to the
Yes.
point where the streets were impassable. And if you ever see some of those cool feel good stories where the Jeeps are literally driving hospital personnel
Yep.
to and from the hospital so that they can provide appropriate care. James and this Jeep were one of those vehicles that was fording 3-4 foot water because, of course, thing's a freaking monster.
Yeah.
And while it is not inherently salt water that was swelled,
I can attest it's pretty salty.
it's pretty salty
I
by
was gonna say,
comparison.
it was the ocean water that swelled.
So
So
That instead of Squatch Patrol, did it become like Tide Patrol for the week?
it could be Tide Patrol, you know.
well, it was that I can't remember what we said the Florida Sasquatch was
The skunk ape.
skunk ape
Go figure.
because they're in the swamps.
They're in the swamps, right?
yeah.
So going to and from the hospital, basically. So he's doing these types of things with the Jeep, which is a great utilization of it. The two things happen.
Salt's bad.
Well, one time, so the Jeep goes to run down the road for some particular reason, and Andy gets an hour and a half, 2 hours away, and the Jeep kind of overheats and is
Angry.
He's on the side of the road and has this kind of peculiar situation. You know what I mean? So transmission is kind of funny and clutch is kind of funny.
Yep.
Um,
Heat is a very bad thing.
yeah. Well, they get it back. James is using it a little while later, maybe a week or two later, and he's out at the beach. He's waiting to get checked in to drive out onto the 4x4 beach. And while he's sitting at the beach, the goes to depress the clutch, and the clutch just goes poof right to the floor.
Yep.
And there's no clutch home, right?
Yeah. Clutch
So the
is bad.
clutch line has blown in its
Exited
entirety.
the chat.
Exit the chat. So he's off to the side, of sorts, while they're trying to get, other 4x4 vehicles out onto the beach, and he's waiting for the tow truck. The tow truck finally shows. The tow truck, I think they first send a slingback, and they're like, well, we can't tow this 37s and change on a slingback.
Yeah.
I may or may not have made that up, but I feel like that was part of the case. So they finally bring
Don't get in the way of a good story.
yeah, don't let the facts get in the way of the good story. So they finally bring a flat deck, and this is authentic as it can be. They start to load the flat deck, and for some reason, the back end of the Jeep is 3 feet, 4 feet in the air, up on the deck or up on a stinger of sorts of the tow truck, and the tow truck driver drops the Jeep off of it.
Yeah.
So the Jeep actually falls off the tow truck,
Which it's built to do.
but
not quite like that, but yeah.
not quite like this, and it's on a hill, so the Jeep starts to descend itself down the hill. So not only did we have this kind of catastrophic fall off the tow truck,
Now it's running away.
now
from-
it's running away.
The
Right?
Jeep has a lot of tow truck stories.
It does.
Well, the Jeep's done a lot of things, so it's got a good character-filled life. So the thing is, it doesn't harm anybody. There's no catastrophic situation, but ultimately there is some peculiarities that kind of are inherently from this conglomeration
yeah.
of events, right? Jeep gets shipped up to us.
Yep. So we pull the motor out because we have some issues. Sometime in that, the Jeep decides that it doesn't even want to start anymore. So we investigate. Salt has found the insides of the starter and made it a movable red-orange brick, which made us all sad.
There's a lot of powder coming out of that.
And we then started to learn how we got really lucky the first time. So somehow we got lucky and the original hydraulics worked, and they refused to work after that. The starter just happened to fit in there. Oh, so nice. And the replacement, not so much.
Right.
Apparently, the runaway Jeep nearly ran over sunbathers.
Seems appropriate.
Fortunately, they were probably cognizant of this massive, sun scourge
Hey, quit
vehicle.
blocking the sun!
Right.
Wait.
Yeah, the Jeep comes careening down the hill at them,
So in any regard, we end up pulling the motor, checking out clutch stuff. Nothing's happy. Send the motor out, have it fully inspected. Relatively nothing too scary.
Nothing too scary. The insides of it are pretty good. It's just the heat has touched the motor over the last couple of years,
Yeah,
and
so-
the gaskets are dry and brittle.
Really angry gaskets. So we put that in there, and we started to address, we had done our darndest to keep the original radiator, which was an aftermarket, really good radiator, make it work with the Hemi. And we just said, that didn't make sense. Let's go with a custom radiator made for this Hemi, make it work, kind of redo a couple AC things, but make it a little less, hot rod, make it a little more easier to work on.
Sure.
So we did all that, and then we decide that instead of fighting with the stock hydraulics, the 200 and some thousand mile 3550 at this point, that we really need a transmission that's up for the rest of the drivetrain.
Yes.
So we get a hold of Tremec,
Yep.
and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can pretty much stick shift the world."
Well, the Jeep left in between that.
Oh, it did.
It did. It
The-
did.
The
It
Jeep
left.
left.
And we were feeling pretty good about it. But there's two parts of this Jeep where it absolutely goes onto truck transport, and I absolutely blame the transport drivers. And this is a cautionary tale, folks.
Yeah.
I am pro shipping vehicles all over the country, but when you do that, you do expose yourself to risk, right?
Yeah.
And the challenge is the driver showed up to pick the Jeep up. And we had a custom hydraulic setup on that. That custom hydraulic was provided to us by Novak Adapters.
Yep.
It was
I forgot
a
about
billet
this part.
aluminum block with a push rod, and we had a whole bunch of measurements of in and out and finite adjustments, which was basically this fine thread, which would, we're talking about just absolutely mind-numbing minutia.
Quarter-inch turns made all the difference.
And so driver shows up. And
This
it was
was
kind
a
of quirky.
very weird.
It was very weird.
situation.
Yeah.
It was a Saturday. It was towards the end of the workday on Saturday.
and he was supposed to be here much
He
earlier,
was
and
supposed
he
to
didn't
be
show
a
up.
couple
Didn't show
days.
up.
It was a day or so
he
before.
parked a block and a half away from the shop.
where
Right.
we could barely see it.
Barely see the transport. The
And he just-
transport's fully loaded at this point.
And he hiked over,
Open transport.
and we're, again, like we said, we treat these vehicles a little bit like our own. So of course I'm like talking Greg down of not go whipping the driver, and I had to like go give him an Ativan and put him in the corner, and so I'm over there watching, not liking it either. But this
Because
is
you
what
guys are like, hey, this is a hot engine on a
Yeah.
manual transmission.
And the
and
guy's
we're-
like, "Oh, I've driven it. We're good.
we're,
No
we're
problem."
blowing Neil up at this point. Like,
Yeah.
we don't like this.
They're like, this isn't going well, Neil. Like, and I'm like, well, what are we gonna do about it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's slated to go to a Jeep Jamboree USA.
Yeah.
It was getting on this transport. Once again, it's going to hit the ground, and I had pretty good confidence in it, other than this stock clutch configuration with this aftermarket hydraulic setup.
So we go. He pulls the Jeep over, and his trailer does cyborg things and moves vehicles around, because we're like, he's not even going to fit that Jeep on there. And we're talking, it's just on the tail end of the truck. And I remember hearing the instinct clutch slip noise
If you-
of
if-
like all the RPMs, no Jeep moving.
Yep.
If
And-
you've ever had to if you've ever let like a preteen and started to try and
Oh.
teach them how to drive a stick, and they give it all the RPMs
And no
and that
clutch out.
slow clutch movement where you're just smoking them together.
And because he was on the back transport, the back bumper of what was in front of him and the front bumper of the Jeep had to be like intimately.
Yeah.
So he had to do
Inches
this
away.
like three
There
or
was
four
a
times,
sheet of paper in between them.
and he kept starting it, moving it like a couple inches forward, and doing this whole time. I'm like, I think I remember saying right after that, clutch is gone.
Yes.
It
Oh,
has
you
to be
text
gone.
me.
Absolutely.
You text me, and you're like, the clutch is going to be smoked. Something is going to be wrong in the transmission.
Yes.
And just a word for the wise. I load every vehicle, and you guys have seen my wedge, and you do all that. I load every vehicle, almost every vehicle, in 4 low.
Yeah.
I'm not too proud. I'm not here to win any tough man contests. I load it in 4 low and just let the Jeep creepy crawly into place.
It's so much easier.
It's so much easier. Just let it be. But whatever, they transport for a living. Jeep shows up in Alabama, and it doesn't get 2-3 hours away. It doesn't even get half an hour, 45 minutes away, to my knowledge, and it's overheating left and right. And the clutch is
Really
the Jeep
angry.
is like stuck. It won't roll in neutral. There's a whole bunch of little quirky things.
Yep. So it gets hauled back,
This is when it gets the Tremec.
and we thought the first
Oh.
experience was bad.
Oh, we thought the first
Yeah,
transport experience
yeah.
was
The
bad.
transport
At
back
least
was
that guy had
worse.
like a Peterbilt and like talked English. The second guy
And it's okay if you speak another language. Scott's the most accepting character in the whole wide world. So if you're somewhere else in the world and you thought that was for 1 second an offensive statement, that's not the case.
Not the case. But it was definitely a challenge to communicate with this driver.
The second one who shows up, who hands me the phone, which has his boss on the phone, and the boss says, "Oh, we ran into an issue.
Yes.
Bringing you the vehicle." Of course, the vehicle showed up again a couple days late. And we're like, why is our vehicle? Where is it? Because at one point in time, the logistics of it simply had the vehicle disappeared, right? Yeah. We didn't know where it was. So the boss is telling me, like, well, the driver lost the keys.
Yes.
And there was a stop in between, and we needed to get the vehicle off. And so we had to hot rod it, or we had to hot wire it. And so we broke this part, but we found it on eBay.
And then that's when it goes downhill fast. Me and Greg, again, being overprotective parents, are in the shop, not happy. Neil's out handling business. And we knew something was up because the way the guy started it was not the way the Jeep should start. And so long story short, he had broke the hardtop. He had broke completely disassembled and then broke the steering column.
Mm-hmm.
The steering wheel wasn't even on it.
Right.
Keys were MIA. You were starting it with a screwdriver.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just flabbergasted.
All of your modules and other components that you would think are kind of neatly tucked up under the steering column were now dangling like appendages down below the steering column.
Yes.
And that transport company wanted to give us $75. And it's not us, right?
Yeah.
It's not us. They wanted to give it to James. And here's the thing, folks. If you're listening at home and you're thinking about transporting, I'm pro-transporting. I really am. But you have to be conscientious. It is an industry that there's negotiation. There's drivers that are transient. There's things that nuances.
We're not going to accept that on your behalf.
And that was the thing, is that
we're gonna take care of you and protect
again,
you
as if they are our own vehicles.
Yes.
Because I know that the moment that driver goes away, our customer now has no leverage whatsoever to receive any compensation.
Yep.
You can file complaints, you can do BBBs, you can attempt to get any type of money out of them for, a credit of repair.
So the funniest part is they thought they were being generous and they're going to give us $75, and you're like, "Oh no, you're not."
No, we're not. I was angry.
This is not how this is going to go down.
Right.
And they were like, "Oh,
what do you mean?"
So we are friends with our local police force.
Well, thank you, law enforcement, for supporting us.
And then
equally.
you should have seen the guy start to sweat when he started to hear about police being called.
Right. And fortunately, again, we've built a number of Jeeps for our local law enforcement, and we're also personally acquainted with a number of them, and that's not a hard call to make.
No.
And fortunately, through some negotiation and just me making it abundantly clear that they were going to have a very bad day, they eventually cashed out about $1,500 to repair the column and related components. That doesn't fix a hardtop,
No.
but that gave us a good column and ignition system again.
Because, spoiler alert, if you didn't know, 01 and 2000 TJ columns are kind of all by themselves.
Yep. They are a unique and independent column.
Yes. And we have lots of columns, but not that one. So we had to source a column. Scott had to rebuild the column.
Yep.
Stupid parts that are, again, 01, or 2000, 2001 only got broken in the process of them doing what the world they did. We literally had parts missing. So we had to get a clock spring for one that was almost unattainable.
Yep, unobtainium.
We are also out of time for this episode, so you got
we're
a
wrapping
2-minute
this
summary.
up.
Yeah.
We're summarizing this because
2-minute summary of what happens next.
So long story short, we rebuild the exhaust again.
Yep.
Much happier with this
Really
time.
cool exhaust system.
Do stainless
Amazing
steel
exhaust.
this time because someone likes to play in the ocean. Anyway, we do the Tremec swap. We have to do custom shifterage on four-wheel drive and transmission because, again, the transmission's not where it was supposed to be because we had to put it forward because of the V8. So we had to get actually a custom shifter, plus me make a cane that was custom.
And I have to give credit to Silver Sport Transmission, which is a prolific international distributor of Tremec, and they're located in Tennessee, and they kind of partnered with us through this process. There's always something to be more desired when you're hot rodding
Yes.
and mixing and matching. The Tremec 4050 transmission, or 50/40. I'm switching my numbers around.
It's big.
Is actually a dump truck transmission manufactured in Mexico.
It's so good.
And it's manufactured for medium duty trucks. So think of like a Spicer medium duty transmission for your internationals, your Freightliner, so on and so forth. The Tremec is a international 5-speed transmission. They just don't simply have an OE stateside requirement. And but they are using these transmissions for not just medium duty trucks, but to retrofit, square body Chevys and obviously Jeep applications, because it does fit pretty good where your AX15, 3550 or NV 4500 used to fit.
Yep. We again, Cliff Notes, but we changed the clutch system completely. We're now internal slave, which is actually, once you get over your trauma response of an earlier Jeeper, actually worked out pretty nice.
Yes.
Once you get everybody's adjustments and things in place, we went with an advanced adapters 4-wheel drive cable shift
on SST's recommendation,
which again, after you do the fine tunings, actually is the best this 4-wheel drive has ever worked on this Jeep.
Agreed.
A lot of custom bracketry.
Yes, all the custom bracketry, pretty much because we're hemming things, and the kit was originally designed for 4.0.
Yes.
But we made it all work, and I'd say it's better for it. We have better exhaust, we have better clearance, we have better radiator, we have better heat dissipation, we have the best 4-wheel drive shifter stuff. This is like fine wine.
Yeah, we're really happy, and like I said, we have just under 600 miles on at this point. And
it's fun to drive.
And it's fun to drive.
I mean, it's just fun to drive.
And honestly, just as last time that Jeff and I had it out last Wednesday or Thursday, I mean, it just drives like your JK right now. You know what I mean? It just fires up. The only little quirk we have is the actual map tuning, and this is the last piece when it comes to tuning itself. But we have a broader spectrum when you are self-tuning, like you said with the original Stroker application. You have to kind of pick where you want the primary function to be.
And it's tuned for Florida.
And it's and ideally it's tuned for Florida at this point, where it's been challenging with this colder weather. But everything else,
but in all intents and purposes, from a guy that every hot rod went away in the winter and you didn't care that it didn't run worth crap, this works pretty darn good overall.
Yes.
In all climates. I'm
Yep.
pretty darn happy with it.
So that, folks, is a wrap. And it will be going home. And I always say this. I say it tongue in cheek, and I'll say it to you guys listening in. I say it nicely, but I say I hope I don't see you again, see you or see it again, in the sense that I hope that, it is my belief that we've done our job, and I want you to be out there using your Jeep and doing cool things with it, so that, we can live vicariously through you and, by extension. And so I hope that the Jeep has a nice long stint before we're doing something else cool to it. Like I said, for me, this was kind of the icing on the cake as far as the refinement and the driveline that we've done to this point. So make sure you look for the YouTube video coming out on it very soon, where we chronicle a lot of the same stuff, but you kind of get to see what we're talking about in the process.
Next week, tune in specifically live if you can, because we're going to do a What's in the Box, but we have an audience challenge as well as part of that. So we want our listeners to jump on the comments and guess what's in the box.
Yes. So please, schedule your fake meetings, plan your lunch hour at 10:19 a.m. I don't know. Do what you got to do.
This is your due warning.
Yes. Do whatever you have to do, but get on and play along with us and have a little bit of fun. Until then, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Well, luckily, I don't have much updates, so we took the whole program to talk about the Jeep.
Yeah, and honestly, my update is purely humorous and social.
Well, you got to tell them about the classes.
Yeah,
I think that's the appropriate thing.
So we fortunately nothing, and I've shared on air, I've shared on American Hustle, and by no means are we in a position where I am in a great place to quote unquote give any type of earnings away. But the greatest measure of success for me would be the fact that I get to a position where we can just kind of give away some of the fruits of our labor, you know, and fortunately between my wife and I, we really want to support community engagement, and benefit, or organizations that have, you know, great missions. Jeffrey knows from running his nonprofit how valuable that is for people to appropriately engage their, you know, your charity organization.
Yes.
Well, now that we
Nonprofit.
know too that you're really taken by 30s and 40s movies, it makes perfect sense how you love the art center.
And that is true, right? And so
I'm only disappointed that I didn't know that movie right off the top of my head.
Ah!
Like, I
So-
should absolutely know that.
I was actually really surprised you didn't, but you know, so for us, there's a 180-year-old community center, located literally on the bluffs of Lake Erie. Just since there hasn't been much development north of them, you have a beautiful picturesque view of the waterfront and the lighthouse, and you can walk to a little park, and it's pretty darn cool.
Well, during the spring and summer, I wouldn't do it right now.
No, it was not. Again, you know, we could go to the beach like James had suggested, but it's not particularly pleasant. But anyways, this particular community center has undergone a number of iterations over its expanse, and currently, and it's offered all types of, you know, engagement, really stuff that I'm very passionate about as far as the arts are concerned, and really has reached out to create community engagement. So it's something that my daughter takes dance at, my wife takes dance at. There's art programs, you can run birthday parties, you can do all this kind of stuff. So that used to be a traditional, Finnish band. It was one of the final like little Finnish community bands, because we talk about Slovakian heritage like mine has. The Finns were really, it was very important to have like music and bands, like a polka type inspired band. We had like a Finnish band up until the early 2000s. Really kind of interesting, you know? So anyways, that's what that space is. And fortunately, we've been, we've been encouraged to become philanthropists of this particular community center. And so my wife and I are out, and it is called Wine About Art. Let's Wine About Art. And there's local artisans have their goods on display. So there's these, you know, beautiful paintings and oil paintings and canvas work and textile crafts and, really cool stuff, right? Unique pieces, and then some, you know, borderline famous pieces, right? Some more little prolific, right? Some bigger money type items. But if you love, you know, some of that local artisan work, this is great stuff. But they also solicit, you know, local businesses and other individuals to contribute baskets and whatnot. So of course, you know, this part of it is a silent auction, and my wife sees a gift basket. And again, as I mentioned, beautiful, you know, local artisan crafts, and not your kind of tchotchke craft fair, but nice high end stuff. But my wife sees this gift basket, and she's like, that might be a nice sporty basket. And it says donated by Taco Bell.
Which is important
Heck
to
yeah.
note. We have now have a Taco Bell.
We have a new Taco Bell
in the area.
Also important to note, and we pull no punches, my wife's favorite fast food chain is Taco Bell.
I was gonna say you got that for Valentine's Day.
In fact, every Valentine's Day, I send my wife a dozen tacos.
Not a dozen roses, a dozen tacos.
Makes
Correct.
perfect sense.
I send my wife a dozen tacos, and that is a little quirky insight to who we are, you know. And so and they're tacos from Taco Bell, because while that's not her favorite food, it is just too good not to do. And she gets her favorite burrito from Taco Bell and a dozen tacos. That's our Valentine's thing.
Yeah.
Unlike
me, which ordered tools on Valentine's Day and then told his wife about it.
Yeah.
Well,
So here we are, all these gift baskets, artisan goods, all this, you know, crafty stuff. And my wife's like, oh, that's kind of like a sporty basket. There might be some cool, fun stuff in there, you know? And
Like sunglasses.
sure enough, no, we couldn't see the sunglasses. Sure enough, she wins this basket, thinking again that, you know, that there might be some decent stuff. We're as they're distributing the winnings of this auction, they bring us this gift basket. And I promise you, it was full of the most bottom barrel freebie giveaway garbage merchandise you could imagine, right?
That's funny.
And it was like the cheapest little water bottles with like this poor Taco Bell branding. It was the cinch strap backpacks that, we thought that maybe they were actually like t-shirts or something. No, they were these, the cheapo backpacks, which are going to be great for Jennifer's school or her classroom. She'll will use all this and give it all away for her students and for her class, that they will get a kick out of it. But just like the juxtaposition of the Taco Bell gift basket along this one-off beautiful, many hundreds of dollar piece of artwork, what I mean?
I love the picture that you posted on social media of your wife appropriately, sporting the glasses,
doing
nice
her cool
pose.
face, throwing the deuces up, right?
And you are just like,
so if
lost
you're not
into a
on
world.
my socials right now, you might want to head over there and check that out. And I'm doing this like,
He's not doing gang signs.
I'm not doing gang signs. I've got this.
You're like this. You kind of wanted to do a gang sign, but at the
Right?
same time, you're like, I gotta.
I've got this
awkward
Latina dance move going on. I feel like I'm the
Something,
Chiquita
maybe.
Banana woman, which
no,
may or may not be.
offense needed.
No. It's like this Latin America dance move, right? And I've got like one hand underneath my,
I think
like
you're giving
under my
yourself
chin.
too much credit.
And
reference.
so what's actually happening is it's this good friend of ours is snapping the picture. My wife and I are both rocking the Taco Bell shades. And I'm actually reaching for more stuff that we had. They bring you the paper of the artwork that you have, bid on and whatnot. And I'm actually reaching for that at the same time that I'm making this dumb pose. And it just comes out with this most ridiculous picture you can imagine. So
It's pretty entertaining.
there you go. That's
Just
the,
like to multitask too much.
yeah, we did that. And I'm gonna be just straight up. We took the limo out. Which,
Of course
you
which
did.
as ridiculous as that is, like it's just part of the
You kinda
oddity
had to.
package.
I was gonna say you have to for that.
We had the limo out.
Maybe
and
you
we
should
did
contact our local Taco Bell and say, hey, if you want to do any
promotional
promotionals,
stuff.
we have a limo.
We have a limo. We have some ridiculous humans who accompany the limo and the promotional gear.
Yeah.
We're here for it. So that was a good weekend. Now, funny enough, I actually got invited out to yet another event next Saturday. So we'll see what that entails at this point.
It's gonna be entertaining.
Oh, to say the least. Anything on your guys's?
I mean, so obviously with helping you with the house build,
Yes.
so there's that going on,
Which
And
I appreciate fully.
My wife bought me the best T-shirt ever to fit my personality here at the shop.
Oh, I can't wait. Here.
So I'm wearing it today, and I'll just let you
oh
read it.
my.
If at first you don't succeed, try doing what Jeff told you to do the first time.
Is that custom made?
No, it was on Temu.
Oh.
And my wife saw it. She's like, I gotta order this shirt.
The fact that it's a Temu shirt, it just puts it over the top, folks. Well then, and this is what I will continue to reassure you. We are really good with Jeeps.
Yeah.
I promise you that. And until next time, folks, we will see you next week. Come on and play along in the game with us.
Keep on.